Cleveland Browns. I mean, they keep ripping off an insane amount of running back carries. 35 running back carries in week 3, 32 running back carries in week 2. I mean, that's a ton, and there will be games though when maybe, Nick Chubb only gets 15 touches because the total number is going to be way less. So I don't know. I think there's some merit in considering a sell high on Nick Chubb. And also, a regret for me, I was probably too high on Odell. Luckily, I got off him. Thanks in part to you. I got off him in any GPP lineups this week, but maybe too high on Odell during redraft season, just because ideally they're just not going to throw. And Odell even seemed to admit it. He's like, I'm not going to have big numbers in this scheme. It's just hard to see them getting into shootouts, although this week maybe is a chance for them actually to get into a shootout. They play the Cowboys. So what do you think about what's going on with the Browns?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think this is going to be, the best week that Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham and to a lesser extent Jarvis Landry have had to have an actually big game in the passing game. The Browns don't want to be that kind of team, but there will be situations along the way wherein they have to throw the ball more. And the Cowboys have been getting shredded through the air. So that will be a situation we'll definitely be talking about on Friday. Austin Hooper, I think, remains a drop. He'll be maybe a matchup-based streamer at best. I think that with the projected game script in week 4 at Dallas, Kareem Hunt is going to be really, really interesting. If the Browns are playing from behind, he's got a locked-in role when the game script is, neutral. And then when they're playing from behind, his role can grow. So I think that he actually might have more upside this week than does Nick Chubb at Dallas.
Let's get to it with the AFC and this Baltimore game. I mean, they were a mess last night. Absolutely brutal game. They were awful. Mark Andrews, I thought, was particularly awful. Lamar was not good. And honestly, I don't want a victory lap because they have some outrageous matchups coming up. Washington, Cincinnati, Philly. But kind of what I thought in the preseason with Marquise Brown is coming true a little bit. We have a very small guy would be a massive outlier in the league's most run-heavy offense with a quarterback who I love, but let's be honest, he's not Aaron Rodgers out there when it comes to throwing the football. So, but like I said, Washington, Cincinnati, Philly next. It sets up really well for bounce back spots over the next month for the Ravens. What did you see out of their game against the Chiefs on Monday Night Football?
Just a bad game. After the game, Lamar Jackson said the Chiefs are like the Ravens' kryptonite. And I don't know if that's the case, but they certainly did not play well. They came out looking good on their first drive, but then settled for a field goal, and then it was all Chiefs thereafter. The backfield continues to be a 3-man ordeal, and even in good offenses, we're going to struggle to carve out consistent, bankable, reliable fantasy production, pinpointed before the game. And so that's going to create headaches. These guys are all just flex options. Gus Edwards was used, with the game on the line this week, after being more of a garbage time back in week 1. So it's a true 3-man backfield. Mark Andrews is someone who has Mark Andrews on one of my main event teams. That was a very, very tilting performance from him, just not coming down with contested catches, not making plays with the ball when the ball hit his hands. But he will have better days ahead. And you mentioned they got Washington coming up next, so they should get right back on track.
Jacksonville. James Robinson, man. I mean, James Robinson is 6,500 on DraftKings this week, more than Joe Mixon, more than Clyde Edwards-Helaire, more than Kenyon Drake, more than Devin Singletary. I get it. Through 3 weeks, James Robinson has handled 91% of Jacksonville's running back carries, and he's seen 10% of the team targets. I mean, that is beyond elite usage. We don't see this kind of usage for running backs in today's NFL very much. Are you buying James Robinson as a no doubt RB1 top 10 option every week going forward? Again, he gets the Bengals this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think for this week he is, for sure. This is going to be one of the best matchups that he'll get for the rest of the season. He also plays in a division where the Texans' defense is bad. The Titans' defense has been extremely disappointing so far. So James Robinson is definitely set up to be an every week starter for the foreseeable future. And even last week on Thursday night with Chris Thompson did play a good amount, enough to get 5 catches. James Robinson still led the team in receiving and rushing. So he's someone that, the Jaguars coaching staff absolutely loves. And I mean, you could tell why. The dude can break tackles and he can play in all phases. So he's going to continue to be out there a lot. And he still has not topped 17 touches in a game, in an individual game yet. But he's going to exceed that in upcoming games. I have no doubt.
The New York Giants, man, another awful game for Danny Dimes against kind of the B team for San Francisco. I still have hope for some spike weeks for Danny Dimes, but it's waning right now. And we knew the first month was going to be tough, man. But as we said, Rams, Cowboys, Washington, Eagles, still have Bengals. They play Washington and Philly again. You know, like the schedule is good for Danny Dimes. Losing Saquon hurts a ton, but I still think he can overcome it. Am I crazy to still have some optimism in Danny Dimes? You think he's just not the dude?
No, I think it's schedule based. You know, I definitely think it's schedule based, and we saw this coming. And now it's going to open up a little bit. Although I don't think that this game against the Rams is any kind of a gimme on the road. You know, underdogs by 13.5. You know, I think that Danny Dimes will pop up for some bigger games. He did have 49 rushing yards last week. We like to see him going back to running the ball. I mean, they don't have a running game outside of Daniel Jones. So if he can start to string together some productive rushing efforts, that's going to raise his floor and raise his ceiling when he has games where he's throws the football better and has time. I mean, he hasn't had very much time. You know, Darius Slayton, I think is a guy that, you know, had that big week 1 game against Pittsburgh, and he should also have better days ahead. Evan Ingram's getting a lot of targets but doing like nothing with them.
The Eagles, I mean, injuries just don't stop for the Eagles. Seems like the last couple of years. Now they lose Dallas Goedert. Now they lose Deshaun Jackson in this game. Joins Jalen Reagor on the sideline. JJ Arcega-Whiteside is going to go down as one of like the worst second round picks that we've seen at the wide receiver position. So they're down to like, I don't know, Greg Ward and John Hightower. And then of course the Bible narrative. I mean, I could see Zach Ertz getting like 15 targets in this game against San Francisco. What do you think about what's going on with Philly right now? They've had enough of Wentz here. They're calling for Jalen Hurts.
It was so tilting watching that game, Cincinnati against Philadelphia, because they had the over on 46. And so when it went to overtime, when Wentz ran in that touchdown, I was like, oh, baby, this is a lock. And I was like, oh, shit, they could tie. And then we go through the entire 10-minute OT period without a score. And at the end, the Eagles are like playing for a 59-yard field goal, and then they get a penalty to push themselves back 64 yards away, and then they punt. And then it was like the Eagles and the Bengals like had a handshake agreement, like, hey, we're gonna take the tie, we're gonna get out of here, because the Eagles, or with the Bengals, when they got the ball, they didn't even try to throw the ball downfield. They just gave like a draw to Joe Mixon, and he gained like 8 yards. Boom, end of the game. Yeah, I mean, it was that was brutal. If you had the over on 46 there, it just wound up a push, so it didn't lose money, but that was brutal.